Strive and Thrive is a collection of discussions featuring guests from various fields, focused on guiding entrepreneurs in creating businesses that excel in every aspect: people, planet, and profit. Throughout the series, you can join us, Romesh and Mike, as we explore relevant topics with our guests which can help businesses thrive.
Romesh and I met while I was supporting a client transforming their business. And I needed finance director support and reached out to him and his team. Since then, we've become good friends who share a passion for business and entrepreneurship. If you like today's discussion, then you want to subscribe to our YouTube and Spotify channels.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our latest episode with Peter and Sarah Moles. Peter and Sarah are co-founders of a number of businesses, Outside Ideas and Mastermind 9, both of which use the power of groups to support and educate business owners. They're also husband and wife. We've known each other for a few years through networking, and earlier this year I was really pleased to talk to their wonderful group at Outside Ideas about the importance of cash flow management for businesses. Sarah and Peter are so passionate about helping SME businesses, and we're really pleased to have them both here today. So Peter and Sarah, thanks so much for joining us. This is literally our first time with two guests together, so this is a monumental first. Welcome, and please, can you tell us each very briefly about your journey to date?
Yeah, thank you for having us. Yeah, I'll go first, shall I? Journey to date. So I'm basically a very technical background, very operational. So I've had experience working for marketing agencies, for coaching businesses, and Pete was working as Outside Ideas sole trader when the business was doing really well. COVID had hit, but he was already online, and actually the business was doing really well. And he needed some more support in a more technical way, sort of CRM systems, all of this sort of thing. And we were sat in our spare room in our old house years back, Post-it notes all over the place, business plans and forecasts and you name it. And we just went, sod it, let's do it together. So I jacked in my gainfully employed career and joined Pete initially then just as Outside Ideas. And since then, the business went from strength to strength, and we launched Mastermind 9 as a way to kind of expand how we can support SMEs, which is much more achievable, I suppose, for small business owners than your traditional kind of coaching. So that's how Mastermind 9 was born. Yeah. And so since then, we've taken the business on this kind of online journey with a great online presence and events and things like that to kind of really expand the reach of it, really. So that's predominantly been my role so far.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, guys. My name's Pete Moles, and I guess we'd probably say that I'm the dreamer in the relationship and Sarah's the doer in the relationship. I think it's safe to say that if this business had continued to be just about me, it would be a massive shit show. Sarah kind of gets everything organised and sorted out, and our success has been largely down to the role that Sarah's played in that kind of crucial managing director style role as we've grown it out. So my very brief history: I studied entrepreneurship at uni. I wrote my dissertation on characteristics of entrepreneurs. I was always fascinated by entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. After uni, I went traveling. I started a business in New Zealand. I raised money, had a bunch of people working with me, and I very latterly found out, Mike, that I have ADHD. And, ultimately I focused on lots of different things. I've got what Sarah calls shiny thing syndrome. And I started writing the business plans for other things when I should have been focusing on what I should have actually been doing. And I ended up losing everything. And it killed me. I lost the business, I lost the money, I lost some friends along the way. Came back to the UK with my tail between my legs. And I had a period of about 13 years on antidepressants. I got picked up by a business coach, and he kind of took me under his wing and helped me figure some stuff out. And I started reading lots of personal development books. And ultimately, the personal development books helped me release myself from antidepressants. When I released myself from antidepressants, my entrepreneur came back, and then I started my own business. And I did really well as a solo business owner. But my thing has always been entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship, and the profound irony of most business coaches, and it was true of me, is what more time for money while you have other people build a business that works without you. And that happened to me, and we decided to build something bigger than just me, but I needed my partner in crime to do that. So that's a very brief overview of.
Yeah, really exciting. And there's a couple of areas I'd like to touch on there with you, Peter. But first, I'm going to come to you, Sarah. What's it been like joining Peter and working with him with his lots of ideas and you having to, I guess, ground it?
Yeah, I mean, to start with, I prefer the term integrator rather than doer, but that's by the by.
Like it.
Yeah, I mean, to begin with, obviously, like I had a career that I was really proud of, and I'd been successful in my own right. So to kind of join Pete on this journey was a little bit like, for a while, I felt like I had a bit of an identity crisis kind of coming into it, because, you know, I'm not the front man. I am not the person who's happy to go up on stage. I am very much the person who likes to be behind the scenes. But as a result, this is Pete's show kind of thing. So I sort of stepped into this. Obviously, we're 50-50, we're equal partners, but it took a little while for me to kind of get to grips, I suppose, with what my role was and how that divide was going to happen. But equally, it took a while for Pete to sort of be able to let go of some of the reins, because obviously he'd been the primary decision maker for such a long time. So there was that. We consciously divided up the kind of the roles. We essentially had our own job specs, where it was kind of like, sort of like, that's your territory, this is my territory, that's what you excel in, that's what I excel in. If the two meet, we'll discuss and we'll decide together, but ultimately it gave both of us the autonomy that we needed to be able to make the changes that we wanted and push the business forward in the way that we could see within our remits. Now, that isn't necessary as much anymore. The business has moved on since then, and we've got a team around us that can help navigate some of the decisions that you naturally face as a business owner. But to begin with, that was definitely necessary to make sure that we could both kind of have our say and have our flair without actually upsetting or treading on the toes of the other person too much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting, because one of the things we found talking to lots of founders with a similar sort of mindset, mentality to Pete is actually finding the team around them. And Pete, in your case, you found your wife, which is an amazing, fortunate situation to help for work. How's it been in terms of helping you manifest your ideas now and turning them into something and building a business around it?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I cannot imagine. I would have said that I was a very risk-averse person before. I needed the employment, I needed the salary, I needed to know where I stood on the ladder, sort of thing. Pete was the wild card, I was the risk-averse one. And but now I can't imagine going into an office and having an employer again. I just can't imagine doing it. You know, having the ability to just kind of see in your mind an idea of what you would like to do, and then to kind of have the ability to just build it. You know, essentially what we've done is spun a business out of thin air. We don't have a product. We don't have a thing, a widget that you can buy and have in your hands. We've spun it out of thin air, and that's amazing. You know, being able to realize that dream and actually build it. It's so much fun. It's a game.
And how's that helped you, Pete, in terms of crafting your ideas with someone who you know can support you now and build it into a business? How's that freed you up, I guess, as an individual, based on what you've talked about in previous experience?
So I think no one succeeds alone, right? And I came to the book Traction quite late in my kind of personal development career, if you like. I've read 200 odd business books, came to Traction quite late, and it was so empowering to realize that what we'd done accidentally was create the visionary integrator role within our business without really knowing it was a visionary integrator. And I think I've just always known that whilst I have got a great creative flair and I'm good at building relationships and I come up with lots and lots and lots of ideas, and I think that I really understand the importance of building a solid culture in a business, a winning culture in a business, and treating people with respect. Ultimately, I know that I've got loads of flaws, loads and loads and loads of flaws. And if it was just left to me, as I said in the intro, my flaws would become unstuck. So I've kind of built this thing knowing what it looks like in 10 years' time from before Sarah and I actually agreed to do it, knowing that I wasn't going to be able to do it on my own. And I needed to we needed to bring in really smart, capable people that were values aligned as we grow. And I'm massively proud of where we've got to. You know, we've built what was in my mind 8 years ago, 7 years ago, and we continue to kind of plow that furrow. And I think that, you know, I spend an awful lot of time with entrepreneurs, and you can generally pick winners. My dissertation was on entrepreneurship theory and whether it can help you pick winners. I think we're going to double our business in the next year, and it's not down to me. It's down to Sarah and the team of people that are way smarter than me. I've just kind of helped put the chess pieces in place.
You're obviously a lover of entrepreneurship, which is a kind of core to Strive and Thrive for Romesh and I. What are your signals for winners? What does make a winner in terms of a founder? And you don't have to give away your IP here. I'm intrigued to know what the magic is and what I have to do to sort myself out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a number of things that come up throughout history and throughout all of the key texts. There's this thing called an internal locus of control, meaning that you need to be in control of the environment. And, you know, as Sarah kind of pointed to earlier on, I used to find that really hard to delegate ownership of various different things to other people. I now realize that the people I'm delegating to are better than me, and it becomes easier to kind of release some of that control. So an internal locus of control, you've got to be able to take risks, calculated risks. Like, no entrepreneur will ever get there without taking risks. And this is a kind of point that Romesh and I talked about when he came to talk to us at Networking In back in the day. We sacrifice an awful lot of short-term comfort for the long-term end game. And I think that, you know, the thing that really separates those entrepreneurs from the small business owners, and I think there are lots of small business owners that think they're entrepreneurs. They're not. They're small business owners. Entrepreneurs are the ones that are capable of building something significantly bigger than they themselves could create on their own. I think that, that there's a desire to win, a deep burning desire to win in an entrepreneur that is perhaps not prevalent in so much of small business owners. And I think, I think they're kind of some of and the ability to sell. I think you've got to be able to sell yourself. You've got to be able to sell yourself and whatever it is that you're trying to sell. An entrepreneur, you know, on the whole personal development thing, in my dissertation, the book that came up more than any others, when you look at the texts, when you interview people, How to Win Friends and Influence People, was the number one. You know, I did my dissertation 22 years ago, but that was the book that more people spoke of, and that was, when you look at the stories of the people that have succeeded in the past, that ability to kind of really, you know, influence people to your way of thinking is such a powerful skill.
It's a book that's been on my list for a while now. I always have a takeaway from each discussion I have. Let's see if that's going to be mine off this one. Romesh, what's your view as an entrepreneur? Has Peter defined you, and what's your thinking?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, it's got me thinking, actually, because, yeah, I guess a question back to all of you, perhaps, is, for me, those characteristics resonate, and I think I've got them, but I've had them naturally kind of at different levels. So, for example, that desire to win, I've always had a desire to win, in my career, in academics, or whatever. I'm always wanting to achieve the best outcome. That's kind of who I am. In terms of projecting myself and being able to sell myself as a product, service, as a business, that's something I've had to learn and develop, and didn't necessarily come to me naturally. In fact, I was a little bit, on the back foot really there. And it was a significant hurdle that I had to kind of overcome. I feel I'm a lot better at that now. And for me, it's actually leaning into who I am and being authentic with that. And I suppose promoting myself in that sense without really forcing, hey guys, I do this and I'm amazing and all that kind of stuff, or my consultant's amazing. So I've done it in a way which is comfortable for me, but it has been a journey, and it's been a more nuanced kind of learning, I suppose. So it's a question for all of you. And Peter, I suspect some of those characteristics have been more natural to you, but have others been learned and developed over time? And I'd put that to everyone else as well.
So I think Sarah will say, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but if you guys are familiar with DISC or colours or insights or whichever else, my natural tendency is slightly more green, actually. I'm kind of green-yellow. So the S and the I are my kind of more prevalent personality traits. More green than yellow, but there's yellow in me. But what I've found over the last probably 2 years is that there is a significant amount more red showing up in my profile at work than there ever was before. I was never the decisive kind of, this is the way it's got to be done. Let's make a decision and move on. That was never there. But I think when you start playing with decent money, you just have to develop and you have to grow. And I think that Sarah, you're smiling. I guess you probably agree with that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think, we used to spend an inordinate amount of time discussing things and not actually just doing things. I coined the idea of being like the sort of the spreadsheet millionaire for us, sort of thing, because there was all planning, but actually where's the doing? So I do think there's a lot more of that, and there's a lot more. I think Pete naturally has had to increase that decisiveness and that kind of that red attitude, I suppose, being in the sales capacity. I definitely don't have that. I can echo you completely, Romesh, like from your earlier days. The idea of selling, I just find it too false in me. But Pete's got the natural kind of flair for it. I'm also much more sort of introverted when it comes to that sort of thing. So, Pete's had to take the lead with that. And I think when you're having to kind of be in that sales seat as often as that, I think it is natural that red attitude starts to grow. And it is true. That's definitely happened over the years, for sure.
And the other thing I would just say on that, the other thing that's significantly increased in me is my resilience. I was someone who had very little resilience for 13 years. I was on antidepressants. A knock would knock me down for another fight with a black dog. And I think over the last 8 years, I've had 20,000 no's in the last 8 years. Like literally, people say no to me 30 times every day, and it's like my mantra is some will, some won't. So what? Move on. Like, and the beauty about that is I have people now as clients that said no to me 7 years ago, 6.5 years ago, 6 years ago. You know, right the way through, they said no to me, but it didn't stop me. It was never. I think that I've just learned that the no's are not no's; they're just not nows, and I'm a pleasantly persistent little shit with that sort of stuff.
If Strive and Thrive had a buzzword bingo, it would be resilience. Okay. It's the one that comes out nearly every single episode. And I think that's been... And what's interesting, and you should listen to the podcast we did with Jeff Bird about neuroscience, and he talks about colours and the science really behind some of that psychometrics. And what's really interesting in what he says is some of that is actually pseudoscience, and you've got to be really careful because people adapt to the context.
Yeah.
Yes.
And actually you can learn some of the traits that you're talking about here by going, it's okay to be resilient to no. Once you're comfortable in asking those questions and knowing that they're probably going to say no, you can learn to manage it, right? And these are some of the learned traits that you can teach some of the entrepreneurs. And I think that for me, that's some of the things I've learned most myself over the last sort of 5 years is you can play in a space where you thought you couldn't. Don't sort of create these arbitrary psychological boundaries of where you can't do sales, to your point, Sarah, or you can't do action. One of the biggest weaknesses in entrepreneurs I've found is their ability to move into action. They often have a plan and they often want to do something, but to turn that into doing is actually quite hard.
Yeah.
Especially if it's out of your comfort zone.
And especially like to that sales point and the no's, you cannot get a yes without getting some no's. Unless you are going to define your prospect until, to be honest, a load of them have walked away because they've got bored. You're not going to find that yes without getting some of those no's. I am just incredibly fortunate that I have another side to my coin in Pete, and I'm able to kind of lean on to Pete when it comes to that sort of thing, and he can lean on to me with stuff that he doesn't particularly like either. So we're able to play to our strengths in a way that if I was on my own, I'd have to swallow that pill. I'd have to get on with it, because you cannot grow a business unless you're prepared to put yourself into a sales position.
We've covered some really interesting points, and they come up, as Mike says, again and again. The resilience, the confidence, take action. All of these things. Put yourself out there. The sales part of the journey. Surround yourself with good people. These are all such powerful things. But also something I'm getting from what you're all saying indirectly is actually be open-minded to how you can change as well. And you have to adapt. You have to learn. You have to keep learning, right, on the journey, because we're not the finished articles. Right? I think each one of you, myself included, has kind of touched on that in some way. So I think for me, that's one of the massive, I suppose, benefits or wins of being an entrepreneur, a business owner, is that you have the opportunity to push yourself beyond what you previously were. And I find that so motivating. Sorry, Peter, you had something you wanted to say there.
You just conjured a Jim Rohn quote in me, which I love, which is, for your life to change, you must change, right? And if you think about the journey that we've all been on, it was scary. There was a comfort zone. We changed, we adapted, we pushed through our comfort zone, expanded. The next time you're faced with a challenge like that, it's slightly easier to go through it. And it's a constant journey of coming up against stuff that you don't know how to deal with, that you're a little bit scared of. You push through, you realise that most of the time the reality wasn't as scary as the thoughts that you had about it. And often it's the thoughts of the thing that keep us awake at night. Once you've actually pushed through your comfort zone, you can sleep again.
Yeah.
What you've just described there is literally. I did an in-person talk a couple of weeks ago to my local chambers of commerce, and it was actually that. Put yourself out of your comfort zone. You're almost breaking a kind of another layer of a glass ceiling, but when you break it, you're adding another layer to your credit side, to your experience, and you just become more and more resilient, but better equipped essentially as well. And I love that. Can I just say, the quote I've enjoyed so far the most, and there've been many so far in this conversation, is turn a no into a not now. That's really good. I like that, Pete. Did you make that up yourself, or was that from one of your many books?
I've read a lot of books, mate. I can't credit the direct source, but it could have come from one of 100 people. But you know what? I'm going to claim it as mine for now.
Brilliant.
Own it.
Yeah, own it. Cool.
Say it with confidence. They'll believe you.
Yeah. I'm like I said, I've read a lot of books, a lot of sales books, and it's just classic sales methodology, isn't it?
Yeah. And your love, Pete, is it around working with entrepreneurs, or is it you being an entrepreneur? Where's the balance? Because we've mixed this conversation between two things: your general interest in learning about it and helping people, which I know is what your business is, and I'd be interested to dig into that. But also yourself and being an entrepreneur yourself. Is that kind of where you've always thought you'd end up?
I knew from 10 years old that I used to tell anyone that would listen that I'd be a millionaire by the time I was 25, and then I had a business failure and lost everything, and I realized that money's not important. Actually, the thing that's important is happiness. So I no longer benchmark my success about a monetary goal, albeit I believe that Sarah and I will be financially free in the future. I'm not going to chalk success up to that. My raison d'etre, and thank you for asking, it's a lovely question, Mike. My raison d'etre really is I had an incredibly painful experience in my past as a result of making some bad decisions. Some of which were decisions that I had direct control over, some of which were part of my physiology that I didn't realize was a problem at the time. The inability to focus was absolutely a catalyst for me losing the business. But I am maniacally focused, I would say, on helping people avoid making the mistakes I made in my 20s. That's what absolutely has been the kind of the guiding light for the last 8 years of Outside Ideas, and now Mastermind 9 is our ability to really help many more people to avoid making those mistakes and grow. But ultimately, my dream is to have 20 businesses. I am, and it's really interesting. Sarah will tell you, I've not really. There was a long time, probably 6 years of being a business owner again, before I allowed myself to start calling myself an entrepreneur. Because I truly understand the word, right? I was so proud this year to be named Entrepreneur in Residence for Oxford Brookes University, because I truly understand what it is to be an entrepreneur, as opposed to a business owner. And I would not allow myself for the first 6 years of being a business owner to call myself that. But I believe I'm an entrepreneur again now.
Can you define it for us? Because it's one of those that comes up a lot in other conversations I'm having. The difference between a successful person who's built a really good business, very profitable, doing really well. You're saying they're not necessarily an entrepreneur. Are you able to define it in your definition? I think I'm curious.
I think an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur because it's in their blood. I don't think an entrepreneur will ever stop with one. I think that's probably the easiest definition I could give you, right? A business owner that's been wildly successful and they've got one business, I would say, is a business person that's been really wildly successful and they've got one business. An entrepreneur is someone that wants to do it again and again and again and again. And I think if you look at most business owners, entrepreneurs that have gone from, you look at Branson as a perfect example, the best example of entrepreneurship in this country. He's had Coke, he's had records, he's had newspapers, he's had airlines, he's had trains, he's got space. You look at Musk, you look at Bezos, you look at you look at Gates, you look at any true entrepreneur, they don't stop at one, Mike. They go on and on and on. And I'll go on and on and on, and it's going to drive Sarah crazy.
Poor Sarah. We'll have to come on to that in a second. One of the things I think is interesting, helpful, but also dangerous is we often use the Musks as an example of entrepreneurship, and for me sometimes that's not always the best. I'm not saying it wasn't good explanation. I mean, it's not the best analogy, because there are people who can run very small multiple businesses and be entrepreneurs, and one of the things Romesh and I have seen with you can't name them, and I think it's sometimes giving those examples of extreme entrepreneurs is not always helpful for people who are at home and want to build their own little business part-time while they're working and then spin something else and go again. And I think helping people and reframing entrepreneurship for everyday person is something that we should be doing more of. And I think people don't often understand their potential for being an entrepreneur as well until maybe it's too late or by accident.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think because I think it feels like lofty and unachievable if you're it's understandable to use like the Bransons and the Musks as the examples because everyone can relate to them and everybody knows what they're doing.
It's an analogy, right?
They're so famous and all the rest of it, the analogy. But actually if you're to kind of want sort of Joe Average business owner to be able to sort of see themselves in that role, then it could feel too big and too grand. Like you're not playing in the same field. So I think it's an important point well made, and perhaps it's not about then wealth. Perhaps it's not about scaling a business to be able to become wealthy, but it's about the ambition to kind of have multiple things going. It's the game of it. It's being able to spin something up rather than extreme wealth. I don't know.
I think this is a really fascinating conversation because the question you asked me was, how do you define it? And I've told you how you define it. In my belief, you're not an entrepreneur if you've got one business. I just, based on everything that I know about entrepreneurship, I think you're a business owner and you can be a really successful business owner.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right?
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think it can be dangerous for people to think I'm an entrepreneur when actually, truly, probably only 1% of people have got the skills, the traits, the attributes, the knowledge to be an entrepreneur.
And the risk
if I'd have said to you, Gareth Tucker, who's one of my clients who's got 3 businesses, you wouldn't understand. So I have to go to the Musks, and I understand the danger of it. But an entrepreneur, in my belief, is someone that will go again and again and again.
It is an interesting definition, isn't it? And I think one of the things we're trying to do, and I think one of the things you guys are trying to do as well, is encourage people who want to step into business.
Yeah.
And if you take a wider definition of entrepreneurship, which is probably less technically accurate, it's actually taking that risk, it's taking that step. Hey, I'm going to do something which means I'm not going to be employed and I'm not going to have a regular amount of income, coming in, necessarily, certainly at the beginning when you start a business, in the same way that you enjoy when you're employed. I think it's really important to celebrate and support that, because that's the backbone of our economy, isn't it? That's what, it's people who are taking that step, and whether they become, if you branch out and just become that business owner and you're doing well and you're successful, you're employing people, brilliant. If you are a multiple business or multiple income stream entrepreneur, that's also to be celebrated. The thing, and I think the point that we all probably agree on is there's almost like a kind of celebrity culture type scenario, isn't there? Which we have in wider society, where everyone's encouraged to act and be a celebrity or pretend we live a celebrity lifestyle. But the reality, we can't all do that, and we don't all want to do that, right? But and the same could be true of having a unicorn business, of being a multiple multinational kind of entrepreneur who runs that kind of business. But you can start somewhere, and you can be really proud of that, and that's where I think we probably all sit within those definitions. So quite interesting.
Absolutely. And actually, to that point, it doesn't matter if your ambition is to be a sole trader and just you doing your thing, providing consultancy or service, through to having a team, through to having multiple businesses. Like, it doesn't matter which lane you want to sit in. They all come with a level of risk. They all come with a need for you to be supported, to find the right advice, to kind of have that end goal in mind. But the end goal will be different depending on which lane you're in, I suppose.
Yeah.
If you're a sole trader
that's interesting.
Looking
I agree with that.
Out loads, the end goal will be different. But it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's perfectly fine for you.
Exactly. It's finding the right lane for you. And just, thinking about the conversation so far, something that Peter has mentioned a few times is the initial business or businesses that you learned from, and you've talked about business failure. And I'm sure, were you guys together at that time, or was that when you were young, free and single, Peter? Is that you didn't have your wise direction there, Sarah? But
it would probably have ended very differently had that been the case, Ron.
Interesting. Well, what a tough experience that must have been, Peter. And can you tell us maybe a little bit more about that, and what were the key learnings from that experience?
So I had it was an online backpacker guidebook. I'd realised very early on in my life that word of mouth is actually the best marketing. And I was working at Heathrow Airport at TGI Fridays immediately before going around the world, and I used to make quite good money in tips by asking people where they were from and telling them that I was going traveling, and if I was going to turn up in their neck of the woods, what should I do? And I realized, number one, it was a fantastic way of getting people to buy into me so that they'd give me more tips. But number two, it was the genuine power of people wanting to talk positively about stuff that they know, right? So I set off around the world. I got to Fiji, and it was like, I'm almost halfway around. I need to do something with this. And I got to New Zealand, and it was, I am exactly as far away from home as I'm going to be. If I don't do something now, every step that I take is on the way home. And I decided to start a business, and it was an online backpacker guidebook. And like I said, I raised money. I had 8 people working with me, made some bad decisions with some contracts that I signed. But I think the most important thing was that rather than focusing 100% of my time on travelblag.com, what I did was I started writing business plans for other cool ideas that I was having. So I wrote, whilst I should have been focused on Travelblag, I wrote a business plan for drift.com, which was a backpacker pirate ship where you kind of went from island to island and slept in hammocks and had parties everywhere. I wrote a business plan for my network. This is 2006. LinkedIn wasn't around in 2006, but not my network was exactly that. It was about the 6 degrees of separation. So, I mean, I've always had good idea. Travel Black was essentially TripAdvisor before TripAdvisor. I've had these good ideas throughout time, but I think the number one lesson is you must focus. You must decide what you want and then pursue it at all costs, at the avoidance of all of the other stuff. And I think the thing that I'm most proud about with what we're doing with Mastermind 9 really is Sarah will tell you I still come up with 20 different ideas a day. They go onto our big ideas board. We have a management meeting every week for 90 minutes. Some of the things make it on and most of them don't. And we stay maniacally focused on where we're going. And I think that brings it back really to the power of bringing in very smart people that are values aligned, that want to help you get to where you want to get to. So there's two things. The people I had in weren't this, and this is no disrespect to the people that were with me at the time, but we were young. Like we were really young, and they were looking at me, and I didn't have all the answers. Now we're older, wiser, and we've got really smart people that are with us on this journey. And I think the number one thing that business owners can do if they want to become successful is, to quote Stephen Covey, right? Start with the end in mind. And whether that's the end in 3 months' time, in a year's time, in 12 years' time, start with the end in mind. Decide what you want and then put a plan in place to work towards it. And that's what we do with our gang.
Yeah, can you expand a little bit now on Mastermind 9 and tell us a little bit about how you help other founders and is some of the learning from this conversation about yourselves cascading onto those? Are you seeing similar personality traits? Are you seeing and is that helping you think about how you support founders with Mastermind 9?
Yeah. So founders make up a very small proportion of the people that we support. In essence, what we do is kind of build a bit of a board of directors for business owners that can't justify the cost of a board of directors. When you're in a growth-focused business, you have to wear a lot of hats. You have to understand sales, marketing, and finance, and HR, and all of those things. And the reality is sometimes we get caught wearing hats that we shouldn't be wearing. So what we do is we build out these groups of 6 to 9 people with as much cognitive diversity as we possibly can. So we headhunt for someone with sales skills, someone with finance, someone with marketing, someone with HR, law, web development. So you get as close to the finished article as you possibly can. And then they commit to coming together every 3 months to do a very high level plan. This is a business plan on one piece of paper. It's not, the 30-page plans that I did back in the day. This is real practical. What's the overarching goal? How much money and how many customers in the next 3 months? What's the sales and marketing goal going to be linked to that? What's the working on the business goal? So that's the systems, the processes, and the people. And then finally we get them to do a personal development goal, and then we hang a to-do list off of each of those goals. So it's literally half a day plan on one piece of paper. And then every month for half a day, they come together in their groups. So there's between 6 and 9 people. They all sign a non-disclosure agreement, and then they kind of commit to helping each other to grow their business. So they come with a question for the group, and we answer as many questions as we possibly can. And then there's accountability. So a half a day, a quarter for business planning, a half a day, a month for business support, and then 20 minutes a week for accountability. So you're partnered with someone for 13 weeks. They help you with the plan. And then every week you're talking to each other going, how are you getting on? Where are you? What do you need to do this week to move you towards what you said you want to do this month? And then, and what I think we're doing incredibly well is we're helping people grow.
And for those people you're helping, what are the kind of facets of situation they're in? Is it experience, lack of experience? Is it behavioural? Is it kind of they're looking for external support and guidance? What's the kind of proposition for those people, and what are the traits that they're coming to you with?
Yeah, so so the answer is they've got all of the skills that you'd need in business. So we've got former HR director of British Gas in one of our groups, former managing director of IAG Insurance in one of our groups. We've got very skilled, knowledgeable people, competent people who haven't got all the answers. So they come to us. And I think the interesting thing about, if you look at our clients, there are some really interesting parallels. Most of them, not all, but most of them are solo founders. So they're kind of doing it on their own. Most of them, but not all, have got a life partner that isn't a business owner. So whilst they might empathise with why you're awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, they don't really understand what it feels like to be worrying about how you're going to keep the lights on and how you're going to pay the mortgage and all of that stuff, because you have to kill what you eat. The second really interesting parallel is they'll all tell you that they've got some great friends, but none of their friends are interested in talking to them about their business.
Interesting.
And then the final parallel is where they've got a team, and lots of our clients have got a team of people. Their team are looking to them for advice and guidance and the answers, and they don't want to admit to their team that they haven't got all the answers, that they haven't got it all figured out, because we are all winging it, Mike. Like, none of us have got all the answers. So as a result of that, business ownership, the facts of business ownership are, it's incredibly lonely, it's tough at the top, and it's hard. You know, it's a roller coaster. And I think that our clients join us because of that fact. And what they get is a really structured program of support that is helping them grow. You know, we've got 5 of our clients in one of the recent groups. 5 of our clients out of 10 in one group have just had the best month of their careers. One of them's 25 years in business, 5 of them in 10. And you can't go to a networking group and speak to 3 people before someone tells you it's hard out there at the moment. 5 out of 10 are having the best month of their career. In our last board meetings, we had 3 people that have had the best quarter ever, on top of the best quarter ever, on top of the best quarter ever. What we're doing isn't rocket science. It's come from business coaching, and it's come from, you know, the stuff that we have learned along the way that really helps people stay on track and stay focused, because most people, if left to their own devices, they deviate all over the place, Mike.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're talking about, again, we're going back to a lot of our learning as well, which is very similar. It's like get a really strong network and use that network when you need help to ask the questions you need, because there's no playbook here. There's no stop. It's not linear, building your own business or being an entrepreneurship. It's about your network. It's about, at some point in time, you'll have a finance question. At some point in time, you'll be worrying about payroll. At some point in time, you'll have a customer offer you the world, and you've got to work out what to do with it. Yeah. And it's how you can navigate that. And I think having some structure and a really strong network is such a powerful proposition for, I think, solo founders particularly.
Yeah.
Especially if they want to grow beyond just their own small little world.
Exactly that. And I think what we do is we occupy a really interesting parallel, because we're not networking and we're not business coaching. If that's the line, networking, business coaching.
It's a nice bridge, isn't it?
We're more on the business coaching end without the cost of business coaching. Mm-hmm. No, it's leveraged. There's 9 people paying the business coach fee rather than 1 person.
Mm.
So it's much.
How about you, Sarah? What are your most powerful lessons from being involved and seeing what the groups are achieving together?
I mean, so I've been facilitating the groups now for a few years. You know, I'm looking after something like 50 clients at the moment, and it is a constant learning. It is a constant adapting. You know, there isn't a rule book. You know, you don't decide to, unless you're in a franchise, but potentially there's a rule book there. But there isn't a if you're spinning up your own business, there isn't a kind of step one, do this. Like that, it just doesn't exist. So you can have people that are hugely passionate, incredibly experienced in their service or selling their gadget, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they've got all of the skills covered. And at the end of it, you're dealing with humans that have got self-doubt, imposter syndrome, overwhelm, personal lives, God forbid, all of the stuff that goes with life. And they're trying to balance so many things all at the same time. And it's being able to, in a really safe space, actually get to the truth. And that's what these groups are really like, the format of what we call the spotlight within the groups, to actually get to the heart of what the challenge or opportunity is that the person's brought to the table, is really special, because you will get the God's honest truth back at you. It will be packaged in a way that is supportive and caring, but it will be the truth. And that can help you potentially navigate around some pitfalls, or to take the bull by the horns when perhaps you were lacking that energy when it was just you on your own. And that's what I think is really powerful about the groups. The relationships that form go beyond, it starts like some kind of weird networking parallel, but after 2 or 3 sessions, actually the NDA and the format just absolutely help you break through that acquaintance level, and you're into something much more personal and vulnerable, but in a healthy way.
I really like it. I believe a lot in action orientated in terms of this, and I've seen a lot of mentorship which is more about supporting the individual, and I think actually there's much more in the entrepreneurial space. You need to get them thinking action, because one of the things I think a lot of them do is, and I've done it, is you pontificate. You suddenly find yourself, I'm not sure, so I'll pause until I'm sure. And we all know you don't do that. You've got to help that person move into action, and it's safe action, right, within the context of how they operate, and you require support to do that, I think, especially when you're having a hard week, month period of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's accountability, isn't it? It's accountability in a safe environment. And you guys have built something that sounds really special and powerful, and well done to you. And listen, there is such a power in surrounding yourself with good advisors, people that you trust. And whether you do it internally or you do it externally, there's so much benefit in that. And really, really good stuff. Guys, we're kind of coming towards the end of our chat, unfortunately. And we've covered some really good stuff. But I'm gonna kind of ask you both very quickly to kind of tell me what the future holds for you. What are your plans?
Pete, you go first.
101 groups, 909 clients, £2.454 million.
There you go.
Okay, I don't know what the answer is.
It's funny.
That's just reaching for the calculator there.
So we're really focused on growth. We have been building. We've been building really slowly for the last, and hitting all sorts of kind of glass ceilings for the last 3 years. We grow a bit, then we stall. We grow a bit, then we stall, and we've always speculated to accumulate. So there's 10 of us, about to be 11 in our little business. The exciting thing for us, I think, is we're about to take off. I think that we'll double the business in the next year without having to grow that much more resource. I think our systems are great, processes are great, our people are incredible, and our clients really are happy with what we're doing. And we're building it so that it will one day work without us. Until recently, I'd say we're probably 18 months off it working without us. I think we're possibly a little bit further away than that now. So what about you?
Yeah, what he said. Yeah, it's about growing our team and seeing them grow and flourish and learn, which is incredible, and getting to a point where actually the reins are being held day to day by someone else. And actually then that frees Pete and I up to do a lot more of the delivery, the one-on-one, the one-to-many, that sort of stuff. But yeah, just being able to reach more people and kind of grow this community, and the energy when that ball is going in the right direction, the energy is fantastic. Like, that's the best dopamine hit. You know. Yeah.
So what I'm getting from that is growth, and building a future where the business isn't going to rely entirely on you guys and resting completely on your shoulders, and that's an amazing thing to aspire to. I want to thank you both so much for coming along today. It's been a brilliant conversation, and my takeaways from this are, we've explored the characteristics of what makes a good business owner or entrepreneur in terms of, what you need to work on, or kind of leaning into what you're already good at as well. I think we have discussed the distinction between entrepreneurship and being a business owner, which was a really interesting discussion as well. And we've talked about the power of surrounding yourself with good people who can support you on your journey. And I think all of those are extremely powerful things. Mike, do you have anything else to add to that in terms of your takeaways?
I could talk to Pete about entrepreneurship forever. I think. So I won't go on to that. I think there's a whole novel on it. But I think along with what you've talked about, Romesh, the bit I think this discussion touches on, that we've talked about a large number of times on this podcast, is around finding a team and how they work well together. And if you're like Pete, with all the amazing ideas and shaping it, and you find your Sarah, actually that's really powerful. And I think lots and lots of business founders are trying to do that, are doing it. And I think doesn't have to be your wife, but it can be. And I think there's a powerful connection between how you two work, which I think is something we pick up from a lot of people we talk to. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike, for talking about the way you two complement each other is wonderful to see. Yeah, well done, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us, guys.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you, everyone, very much for listening or watching, and we hope you enjoyed today's discussion. Strive and Thrive is a podcast for entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders. Please like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels. See you next time. Thank you for listening to Strive and Thrive.